I feel like we should just fucking jump into it because like everything seems to be working well, and let's just plow forward.
I like it. I like it.
And for those of you who are like, fans of Cranked and Ranked, that we have, I'm comfortable now saying fans because there's a few of you that I would say are fans. I know you've probably been like, what the fuck, guys? But yeah, we've actually gotten together every the last couple weeks to record episodes, and it turns out that in the tiny podunk town that Eddie Sparxx lives in, when the weather's bad, that also means that the internet is bad.
Yeah, abysmal.
And so we started making this very episode 2 times before, and very quickly. On my end, Eddie's freezing up all the time, and then I guess on the other way around, it's me that's freezing up. Yeah. But it seems good, and so I'm happy to say we're back, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
And we're back with the ranking that you've all been waiting for.
Yes.
No. The funny thing about this is that I feel like I've had my ranking ready for like a month now. Or 3 weeks, and even today I switched 2 albums around. I went, okay, let's switch these. But hi everyone, this is Cranked and Ranked. That's the name of this podcast and YouTube show, and we rank band and artist discographies, and we do other shit too. But the main part of the umbrella is Cranked and Ranked, and that's what we're doing today. We're ranking an artist discography, and the artist for this episode is Eddie Money.
Yes.
And
not me. I'm very poor.
No, that's it's an interesting one because I had only heard one Eddie Money album all the way through, and I heard that one 30 years ago. So or more, more than that, but it's been a long time. So it was interesting to jump into this artist because I've always randomly heard, Eddie Money songs and always liked them. I had never heard an Eddie Money song that I didn't like, or the hits wise anyway. So that's why we're here today to rank Eddie Money, and I'm all like, how do we do this again? Okay. We start off by talking about where this artist came into our lives. I actually have a little thing for kind of my introduction to Eddie Money, because I wouldn't call Take Me Home Tonight to be my introduction to Eddie Money, because I knew that song because it was fucking massive when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the thing where I go, ooh, and this is the artist, Eddie Money. It didn't like connect with me. It was just a song on the radio that was cool and fun and had a nice vibe to it, and that was really it. So that's all the Eddie Money exposure I had. And then, I think, I'm going off of memory, I think it was around 1988, there was a movie that came out called Back to the Beach. And Back to the Beach was... There were like Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello or whatever. They used to be in these like beach party movies back in like the 50s and shit when they were teenagers. And so in the late 80s, they decided to make this movie where they're older now, but it's kind of spoofing the beach party movies, but not like in a Naked Gun kind of way. It's just kind of like a, it's kind of just, I don't know. It's just kind of an irreverent, silly 80s comedy where these two 50s icons are now back on the beat, Back to the Beach as the name of the movie. And I haven't seen it in years, but I loved it at the time. It has Pee Wee Herman doing a song randomly in the middle of it.
Oh shit, dude! And, I'm looking at the like movie poster, like front cover for it.
Yeah, it's got
How
fish bones in the movie.
how have I never heard of this? This is aesthetically
it
like
wasn't-
all over me.
It was not a hit. It was a hit to me. I saw it a couple times in the movie theater. I loved it so much, but it was not a hit at all. And I don't know if it's aged well because it's probably been 20 years since I've seen it. So, but I bought the soundtrack because that's what I loved doing back in the day. Is that back when movies had soundtracks with like pop and rock songs on it. That was always what I was hoping for. If I saw a movie and I liked it, I'm like, oh God, please. And you watch the end credits, and I'm just waiting for it to say soundtrack available on Arista Records or whatever. And I'd be like, I'm going to the mall. And I would go, and so I bought the Back to the Beach soundtrack on vinyl. I mean, I have it on vinyl again now, but I bought it. My mom bought it for me. I was 10, so, but and the very first song on it, and the song that opens the movie, is by Eddie Money. It's it's like, is it called Catch a Ride or something? I know that Catch a Ride on a Wave all over the world. It's like almost like a Rocky Beach Boys. Yeah. And so that was my first exposure to Eddie Money. I was like, oh, he does the song from the beginning of Back to the Beach. And I always really liked his voice. He has a really sort of unique voice that's like, it's a little bit raspy and a little bit strained sounding, but in kind of a really soulful and cool kind of way.
Yeah, he's got like a really good range, but it somehow stays in this like zone of very husky cigarette smoke voice. Yeah, where it's like, yeah.
Which I think that's how he died, right? From lung cancer or whatever, or throat cancer or something like that.
As it turns out, I'm looking at the wiki page right now because I wanted to cover this properly. Money, who had been a cigarette smoker for years, developed pneumonia following a minimally invasive heart valve replacement surgery in July 2019, causing him to cancel tour dates. On August 24th, 2019, he revealed that he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. Died of complications from the cancer at Keck Hospital of USC in LA, September 13th, 2019, at the age of 70. A year later, his family filed a lawsuit alleging wrongful death against the hospital with an additional allegation of medical malpractice. So,
shit. Interesting.
Yeah. So,
So
anyway,
he passed away recently.
In the grand scheme of things, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a real bummer as well because like I'd just gotten into his music like a year prior, and I just remember that happening. I was like, God damn it, like fuck.
Yeah. He and so, but that right there, that was pretty much my only other connection to Eddie Money was my brother worked at a video/CD store. That was, funny enough, called CD City and Video. And then later on it changed its name to something else, but he worked there for like all the way through college and stuff. But I would go there a lot, and not only did I get like free rentals and discounts on stuff, but occasionally if he got like a promo that nobody wanted, sometimes he would just throw it my way. And he got a cassette promo of the what is the name of the I think it's Nothing to Lose, by the 1988 album Nothing to Lose.
If I could walk on water.
Yeah. And so that's the first and only entire Eddie Money album that I'd listened to prior to this. And I liked it at the time, but it was the late 80s and I was getting into heavier stuff, and Eddie Money just didn't do it for me. But I did not like it. It just wasn't what I was looking for. So then it's just been years and years of me hearing, that song or Baby Hold On or Two Tickets to Paradise, or, I did randomly, and I'd be like, oh, those are good songs. Oh man, I like his voice. One day I'm going to listen to some more Eddie Money. And then I just have never done it, which is why this show's fucking great, because now I've heard everything by Eddie Money. And it's an interesting, we'll get into my ranking, but it's an interesting sort of, it wasn't the smooth transition into Eddie Money that I thought it was going to be. I thought I was just going to eat everything up, and it was going to be like candy, like musical candy, where it's delicious. No. But it didn't really work that way for me, and some of it did. But so yeah, so for you, so I'm assuming it's probably the same kind of thing, only it's, you know, obviously in this century, because that's, yeah, you were born, but you probably heard the songs randomly throughout the years.
Yeah, and a big thing that motivated me to check Any Money out is, are you ready? GTA San Andreas.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
And by extension, GTA Vice City Stories as well. Because he's had a couple appearances in the GTA soundtracks. But the big one, obviously, anyone who liked the rock stations in GTA San Andreas knows Two Tickets to Paradise. And
Yeah.
there was just something about finally getting to the third island of that game, the desert one, where you finally get access to planes, and there is just something about like just flying through these canyons and shit in these planes that you finally get access to after like grinding through this game. And then, you know, on top of that, a song like Two Tickets to Paradise, where you're just soaring through the fucking air, getting into dogfights and shit, like just pure unadulterated like atmosphere and fun, just chef's kiss, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, Any Money is a GTA, is a discovery I can thank GTA for.
Nice.
Once again on this show. Get your bingo cards out, people. It's gonna be one of those.
And so here we are. We're ranking, what was it, 11 albums? Yeah, 11 albums.
Yes.
You know, ranging, starting in the mid 70s, and then or late, almost, I guess late 70s, the year before I was born, 1977, all the way. I guess his last original album was at the end of the 90s, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, dude had a good run. And I'll talk about it more when we talk about albums, but it's an interesting career to me, because I feel like there are people that are like really big Eddie Money fans, but Eddie Money isn't an artist that like people talk about all the time, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like, honestly, like, I think after he died, there was that, I don't know what it was, where James Hetfield does Baby Hold On, like, acoustically. It's great. It's a great
really
version of it, but it just really made me think about, like, I know there are people out there that are like, yeah, I fucking love Eddie Money, or Eddie Money was important to me in this part of my life, or whatever, but he's not an artist that, like, you don't hear his name that often, because he lived in this really interesting sort of flirting with popular music while also still being kind of a rocker dude.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he ended up like kind of flying under the radar for a lot of people, because, you know, people that listen to pop music maybe weren't necessarily into the rockier side of things, and people like me who are into like rock music, it's not rocking enough. And so, like, I almost feel like he lives in this middle ground, and
Yeah.
the people that are looking for that middle ground type shit, I guess, you know, AOR fans or whatever, shit like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's interesting, because that's an interesting career, because there's not a lot of artists like that people just still talk about, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'd say he occupies a similar zone to Toto, where they have rockin' songs, but they're able to do pop music and get away with that as well.
Yeah.
You know, to where, granted, he's more of a, there's much more focus on he's the guy than a band like Toto, who are just all incredible session players. His band he always had behind him were really good.
yeah. Well, I guess let's get into, I mean, we're talking about it, we might as well jump into the albums and really get the conversation going, because that's what it's all about. The ranking is not important. I know I always hate it when I say that, because I'm like, come listen to my show where we rank albums, but really the ranking's not very important. Because at the end of the day, who gives a fuck? It's more about just talking about music. So yeah, All right, so let's do it. Let's, as usual, I'm going to let Eddie start it off with his number 11, which I think is also probably going to be my number 11
Okay.
Eddie Money album. Maybe it will. I don't know.
If it's the same, we'll camp out here for a moment and we'll just go kind of back and forth. So my number 11 is his last album, which is "Wanna Go Back," and it is a covers album.
So yeah, same here. Same here.
And again, it falls into that bracket of it's good. I think he covered the songs that made him him. But again, like I say, it's him covering other people's works. So, and being such a fan of his other stuff, I just thought to myself, he didn't put out an album for about 8 years, put out a covers album, and then just completely dipped out of doing music altogether. And it was his last album that he ever did. And in a way, it's kind of like a nice swan song for him to bring it full circle. And it's like, hey, many of these songs, made me want to do this in the first place. There's lots of soul and Motown style stuff on here.
Yeah.
And it's cool to hear him cover some of his favorites and have fun with it. But again, it is a covers album.
Yeah.
So
covers albums, they always hit me as like, some of them are enjoyable, and if you're a huge fan of the artist, then obviously you're going to enjoy it. But I always feel like these are probably much more enjoyable for the artist to make them than it is, for anybody else. But by the time I got to this point, because I listened to his albums in order, the entire time I was listening to his stuff, because there's only 3 or 4 of his albums that I think I 100% really like, and then the other ones are kind of like all here and there with my opinions on the things. But the one thing that I was like, I felt the whole way as I'm just like, I don't feel like he really like, I don't know what his perfect genre is, because he flirts with so many different kinds of things in his albums, like rock music, soul music, pop music, and singer songwriter, I guess, kind of shit. And so, like, I was like, well, why is it that it feels like he doesn't have any particular style? And then when I get to this cover album, the one thing that's very telling to me is there are no rock songs on this album. So I'm like, maybe he like, maybe that's why, like, when we get to the albums that I really like, there's album that, it's less rock in some cases. And so I'm like, I feel like maybe he did himself a little bit of a disservice, because I feel like maybe he should have been making music that was a little more on the soul side, or, because I feel like that his voice is perfect for that. And so when I hear him do these covers, I'm like, oh man, he should have done more originals that sounded like this. But there's not a lot of originals that sound like Motown or whatever in his stuff. There's a few, but so that was the thing, is like I didn't hate this cover album, but it didn't really do anything for me. But it really was like that thing where I go, interesting that like he's not really a rocker. He's not, that's not his bread and butter. That's not his go-to music, is not going to be rock, not even rock in the vein of like Springsteen or whatever, which he dabbles in quite a bit. It's just the fucking soul music. And but none of that, I mean, not to say that's bad. Fucking some of that old soul music is fucking amazing. It's like, you give me fucking Sam and Dean any fucking day. I love that shit. But yeah, so this had to go at the end, because it's like, I'm more interested in an artist's original work, really, no matter who they are. And so, so Wanna Go Back ends up being my number 11 as well.
I think as well, just to come off of that, it's when was he born? Let's have a quick look here. March 21st, 1949. So by the time he puts out his debut, he's already pushing 30. At which point, especially in like popular music, You know, the idea that, you know, the younger you are, the more marketable you are.
Yeah.
So having your debut come out, you know, and this is something that worries me, you know, you know, trying to, you know, I'm hurtling towards, you know, 27, and I'm gonna reach the Eddie Money stage where I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm kind of the older guy in this game, you know,
But to be,
quote unquote, in the eyes of, you know, pop music, where in
yeah.
order, you know, especially nowadays, people expect people to have a number one single by the time they're 16, and in the final series, final episodes of their Disney Channel show, you know.
Yeah. But I think the music that you're making, nobody's going to be surprised that you're not young. Because
Yeah.
the rock and roll you guys are making isn't young people's rock and roll. It's you know,
Yeah.
it folks like me would be into it.
Nice.
So,
Well, that's nice to hear, because like that's exactly what, you know, we know what we like, and we're
Yeah.
like, we want to be a cross between the old sorry, I'm just refilling old bevy here. But we're much more interested in just songcraft, and we prefer those kind of techniques of the 80s and 90s to, you know, we have modern influences too, but we kind of straddle that line. We've always wanted to be a bit of classic, bit of new.
yeah.
But yeah, like I say, it's just coming back full circle back to Eddie Money. Yeah, he always was like a little bit older than
Yeah.
some of his
Yeah.
contemporaries, so I guess that could have impacted, at least like image wise.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, it wasn't as big a deal back then to be
No.
older. Like now, fuck it. But I mean, yeah, even heading into the '80s, you could still be a little older. I remember, you know, heading into the '90s, I remember there even being a big deal when the band Everclear blew up.
Yeah.
Because like they blew up and like the main guy was I think already almost 40 and everyone was like, oh my god.
Oh shit!
Something like
holy
that.
shit.
So they had Everclear had already put out an album, but the one that like broke them, I think he was in his mid 30s at least, if not late 30s. And so you know, that even in the early 90s, that was a big deal for everybody to point out, he's old. Same thing I think with the Goo Goo Dolls, but the Goo Goo Dolls started earlier. But even then, like they were older dudes when they finally like got commercially popular. You know.
To be honest, I'm the youngest person. I'm the youngest person in my band. I'm 26. Ollie is 30, and Callum is 32 this December. But
Wow. Old folks.
what we do have
It's some big old swinging dicks. That's what it is.
Yes, we do. Yeah, yeah. Alongside that, we also have a stack of demos this fucking high, so we're just set. We could put out a fucking album every year at this point, you know.
Nice. That's
We
cool.
could do the Sabbath thing of just like put out 6 game changers in a row, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to sound cocky, but some of them are pretty good.
All right. Well, let's move on to number 10.
Cool.
And let's see. We might still match up here, but I think after this, maybe not. No, we won't. Never mind. We're not going to match up here. There's no fucking way. So just, yeah, go ahead. Number 10.
Okay, I'm interested. I'm interested in this. Okay, so my number 10 is Love and Money from 1995.
Nope.
Okay. This one to me, after the string of albums, that this is one of the few that doesn't appear on Spotify. So I had to go out of my way to go on YouTube and check it out there. Did you have the same? Did you have the same thing for Love and Money and Ready Eddie?
Yeah.
I don't think, because they were on different labels or something like that.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I had to go to YouTube for that. So thanks to whoever uploads those things to YouTube, because they're very helpful.
Yes, very very much so. But yeah, like I say, it's one of those things where it's like, this album to me, you know, it's one of those that I've spent the least amount of time with, having listened to it for the first time for this, and it's very much in the vein of I know you've named it before, and I don't want to sound like I'm being mean about it. I liked it. I didn't hate it by any means. There's no Eddie Money that I don't at least like.
Yeah.
But this one struck me as the what have I got here? It's the mid-90s and all your friends are accountants now album.
All right, that's way funnier than you even think, because in my notes for this album, I have a reference to accountants. I'm shitting
holy
not.
shit.
I'll get there. But it's so funny that we both fell on it in the same way. But yes, yeah.
We've done that many bands and artists at this point. We can kind of tell, and the telling thing is a move towards a more adult contemporary vibe, and it's 1993.
He's like all the people
7.
buying those new Don Henley albums. I'm going for then. So.
It has I like it. It has a very chill vibe to it. There's a couple rockers on here, but song for song, this is the softest album of his 90s era, and I like when Eddie Money does a ballad here or there, but I like a little more bombast overall. I think bombastic pop rock is his A game, and I think interspersing it with songs like the ones that appear on here is a good move. I just think that this one's a little bit too, and this is coming from someone who likes Michael Bolton. This feels like Eddie Money doing a Michael Bolton album.
I realized my microphone wasn't plugged in this whole time, so I was using the shitty computer microphone. I apologize. Now I sound better.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, you sounded fine, and now you just sound really good. So
hello.
Yeah, very nice.
All right.
Take it from here. I want to take a sip of this.
Oh my, yeah. So I'm close to you with this, but my number 10 is Right Here from 1991.
Really?
And the reason I put this one here is because this one actually hits me even more like adult contemporary rock than Love and Money. Because Love and Money, he's leaning into the ballad type stuff. This one is when you can tell he's even trying to make some rockers, but even the rockers are kind of like, don't turn it up too loud. These people are older now. And so this is it's his 8th album. But the really interesting thing is that it's weird that certain artists made this turn in the 90s. And I said Don Henley earlier, like Sting, all these people were like, they almost like didn't really give a shit about young people listening to their music anymore. Like they just started like watering down everything. And I don't know. I'm assuming it's just their taste, they were older dudes themselves. And so I guess, their taste didn't align with the younger people. But like Right Here came out like right before grunge blew up.
Yeah.
And so if you're paying attention, all right, my dog Melvin is like, do you know when they do the back scratches, he's on his back, like, Melvin, you doing good? He's as you were, dude, as you were. So it's, but the thing, so once you get to Right Here, which in 1991, the thing that was kind of bugging me about his output from beginning to end was that he had these different sort of song styles that he would do, but he would always do them. Like the same kind of songs he's trying to do in 1991, he was also doing in 1981. And it's just a different production style and different instrumentation because it's now the early 90s or whatever. And so it feels overall kind of dull and uninspired. And I almost feel like, because he had a lot of people that like co-wrote songs with him, even more so when he got later on into his career. But his overall output, if you listen to it, and there's a couple albums in particular where it sounds like they had a meeting with his managers, and his manager said, look, here are the kind of songs that could produce hits, and then they just made each one of those. And they're not bad songs, they're just very formulaic, and if they didn't have Eddie Money's voice on them, I wouldn't give two shits. For most of his output, every single album up until this one has something on it where I'm like, it's a good song. It's a good song. I like that one. But there's always those that I go, this was kind of like, hey, we need to put one of these on here, kind of thing. Because I don't think Eddie Money was. I mean, if Eddie Money's family is watching, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't feel like Eddie Money considered himself an artist. Like, as in, like, I'm creating art. I think the dude just loved to sing. And he wanted to show up to the studio and be like, yeah, let's just throw some fucking songs together. I love singing. And so that's like, but that's nothing wrong with that. I almost feel like that's a rarity. But once you get to 1991 and it's kind of the same thing, only more watered down, I guess it's commendable that he like stuck to his guns in a lot of ways, but there's basically no progression in his music at all. Not that there needs to be, but this is from my point of view and my opinion. And we all know that I love artists stretching out, trying new things, being adventurous. But not every artist needs to do that or wants to do that. But that's just my opinion. So once you get to right here, the album right here, it's just it just didn't do much for me. It was too soft and too much of the same. And I would have loved me. I would have loved it if he just went like, well, I'm going to make a grunge album.
Yeah, that
because his voice would have been great. But when this came out, grunge wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was, but it wasn't like in the public mind.
You had to be really tapped into what was going on in Seattle to really know.
Yeah,
before Nirvana dropped.
Yeah,
yeah.
So that puts it at number 10. It's one of a few albums I'm going to talk about that didn't really have enough going for it to really like make an impact. But there are a few. We'll get to some Eddie Money albums that I just legit enjoyed all the way through. But we're not there yet. So that was my number 10 right here.
Okay. I like that one a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's time to get to my number 9.
9.
Okay. So
I still want somebody to take the song Revolution number 9 by the Beatles, but then put that guy's voice, go
Big
number
Smoke.
9, Big Smoke's voice.
You know what? I'm going to look it up and I'm going to see if it's been done, because there was a huge wave of San Andreas memes around like 2016, 17. Let me have a look. Let me have a quick look. Was it
Big Smoke, Revolution number 9?
Revolution 9, Big Smoke. Someone's done it.
Nice. I know. I'm like, if I was more in tune with like the gaming culture, I may have already thought of this years ago. But yeah.
Oh man, Revolution 9 and a large soda is cool. Nice. Okay.
All right. Anyway, number 9.
We might check that out at the end.
Yeah.
Little bonus.
Or save it for the Beatles ranking.
Yeah. Okay, right. So my number 9 is Ready Eddie. So this one, it says right here, Ready Eddie was Money's first and only studio album for record label CMC International. During its recording, the album's budget exceeded by 56 grand, which came from Money's own pocket after CMC refused to pay it. Holy shit. But yeah,
what was he doing? It was the late 90s. he was partying with Fred Durst. What the fuck was going on?
Chocolate starfish.
Kiss my
flavor
starfish.
water.
Chocolate starfish.
Oh man. Oh. Gotta keep on rolling, baby. Take him to the Matthews Bridge. Okay.
No, we gotta
man.
stop. We could go on for all day doing that.
Yeah. It's just one of those days. Anyway, why is Limp Bizkit in any context funny as fuck? Anyway,
I don't know. They're the gift that keeps on giving.
They're really
They keep on rolling.
Mm.
All right, Ready Eddie. That's what you're talking about.
Yes. So, this is another swing at the whole AOR hard rock angle, albeit 8 years after what's it called? What's the album called? Right Here.
Right Here. Yeah.
It's kind of similar to that, but with more of a late '90s approach than a borderline hair metal vibe. So it's got the opposite end of the decades mark on it, and I think it's good, but again, it's just kind of like, I don't know, vibe wise, it's after the fact. Upon listening to it, I was like, man, this is fun. I love it, but I just love the 70s, 80s, and through 91 vibe that he had. Just that old school thing going on. And honestly, like on any given day, I may even reach for this one. But it's one of those albums where it's like, yeah, it's formulaic, but it's also good at what it set out to do, and that was just be a fun rock album with Any Money singing on it. Most notably with the scantily clad blonde, waving a couple race cars while he's on a billboard. That's a pretty cool, self-aware album cover, I think. It's like, hey, how the previous album had me stood in some hallway at an abbey? This one, I'm on a billboard and there's a hot chick and race cars. We're back to that. And yeah, it's it's not anything groundbreaking, but it's got some air guitar moments, and I had fun listening to it. It's a shame that it's not on streaming because I could have spent a lot more time with it. But yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those like hidden worthwhile listens, if you ask me. So yeah, that's Ready Eddie. That was my number 9. It's got some throwbacks to and callback tropes to his 80s era, but it still feels in keeping with 99, which is obviously the year of its release. Anyway, back to you with
cool. We're actually kind of close to each other with these right here, because my number 9 is Love and Money from 1995, his 9th album. And so this is still, like, to me, very adult contemporary, but for some reason I feel like there's more energy to this album, and I think it's because the ballads and bluesy stuff feels way more suited for him. So like it just seems like his sweet spot. When he gets to sing stuff like that, I'm like, it sounds good. I don't really care that the album is not doesn't have like rockers all over it.
Yeah.
But it's still not anything that I'm really that, entertained by. It starts to fade into the background really easily. And then, of course, the very last note I have for Love and Money is still too much of it is music for the guy who used to be a rocker, but now he's an accountant. So
we had this same thing for the same album.
yeah. Because that's what happened to a lot of people. Like that's one of the many reasons why I just feel like a fucking alien on this planet, because there are so many people that, now that I'm older, like people will say things like, "Oh, I used to listen to music, or used to listen to that band." I'm like, "Used to? Like what the fuck are you doing?" and I think it's because there's so much the groupthink mentality is that when you get older, there are things you're not supposed to do anymore.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to start, if you're going to enjoy yourself, enjoy, some sort of entertainment, it's supposed to be movies and TV and sports. It's not supposed to be music unless you're listening to jazz or something like that. So I feel for artists when they get older, because so much of their audience doesn't really care or pay much attention.
Just really starts to suck.
Yeah, it does. But on Love and Money, I just feel like he probably really had a nice time doing these more low key kind of songs. Because, like I said, I really think that he just loved to sing. And you give him some good shit to sing, and he's there. He's going to be singing. So that's my number 9, Love and Money. On to number 8.
Okay, so this number 8, the top 8, obviously the first 8 Eddie Money albums were quite a tricky ranking for me to do, because I like a lot of these albums for different reasons, and there's a lot of different vibes across all of them. There's a very clear production evolution across his stuff, where it's like, oh yeah, of course that sounds like 83, or that sounds like 88, or that sounds like 77. Again, that falls into the thing of I think you're right. I think he's a singer who at heart simply wanted to sing and make a career out of it, and he did.
He did.
And regardless of how often he's actually brought up, I think he's got a hell of a soundtrack to his life. So with that, my number 8 is 1980s Playing for Keeps.
Okay.
So this is the third album. It's got some of the songs have kind of like a reggae vibe to them, which is interesting. Some songs obviously are a bit more in the rock vein, but there's a cool evolution of vibes here. But I also feel like there's a few moments where it's not as consistent. Trinidad is a great opening track. Running Back is good. Get a Move On, Let's Be Lovers Again is a duet. That's cool. But I will say it clocks in at 36 minutes ish, which is a healthy length for an album of this style. But again, it's one of those albums of his that I've spent less time with, because there's certain things he does on other albums that makes me think, ooh, nice. So naturally, this one got moved a little bit further down, but this is the beginning of like my real interest in his catalog. I love that, OG Eddie Money run. And for some reason, this time around, this one ended up working its way to the number 8 slot. I think as well, it's one of the more stylistically, when in the rock vein, it's a little more middle of the road, with the exception of like a few like little reggae moments. But yeah, it's a cool album. It's a cool album. I think this was, I don't know whether or not this one, here we go. Here it is. I remember there being a thing at the end of the tour for this album. Following the end of the tour supporting this album, Money experienced a collapse and subsequent hospitalization. A notable break allowing for recuperation followed. And I don't know if that's related to the OD he suffered, which left him with a permanent limp afterwards. Which was actually quite early in his career. Where here it is. In 1980, after drinking alcohol, Money overdosed on a synthetic barbiturate that he mistook for cocaine. He suffered damage to the sciatic nerve. Oof, fucking killer.
Shit.
On his left leg. Was unable to walk for months and had a permanent limp thereafter. I tell you what, I had a leg injury and I had my leg in a splint for like months. By the time they took it off, all of the muscle just like completely died away strength-wise, and it's fucking surreal learning to walk again. And I know, obviously he had a permanent limp, which is a little more severe. Yeah, but I know all about how, like the frustration of how long it takes to get to walking again. So, he's a fucking trooper for doing that. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would assume that the collapse may have had maybe something to do with that, or
Sure. Or just exhaustion. I mean, I don't know if he's
perhaps,
out there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy's a fucking unit for getting through all this and living as long as he did. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like I say, my number 8, playing for keeps. Over
Okay.
to you.
This is going to be real quick because we already talked about it and I have nothing else to say. Number 8, Ready Eddie from 1999.
Okay.
His 10th and final album of original songs. Like you, I enjoyed it because it was a little more rockin'. I thought some of it was pretty cheesy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but it was. And
I think it was. I think there was a tongue in cheek element.
yeah, but once again, it still was nothing new for him. It was a bit more enjoyable for me, but his '90s output for me, I was just like, not. It didn't do much for me. So that ends up making it to where like all of his '70s and '80s shit is my top 7, and so let's move into your top 7 as well.
Okay, my number 7. I really juggled with this one, and this could change tomorrow. But my number 7 is 1978's Life for the Taking.
Same here. That's also
Is
my
it?
number 7. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to bring up is the hilarious backstory of the album art. Do you know about this?
No, I just remember I was like, why is it so similar to the first album art? It's just him standing in a room,
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the first album, if you look at the debut, he's in a suit. He looks really smart. He's got a cigarette. He's looking really suave. It's a noir photo of him with these doorways and that, and he looks really sophisticated. Whereas in Life for the Taking, it was like to spoof the fact he'd just been on tour. So he's in like the same place, but this time he's really tired and he looks like he's been dragged through a hedge backwards. So
Interesting.
That was the vibe. I and it's also in color as well, so really highlights. I think it's clever. I think it's a funny play on the the fact that he toured his ass off of that first album.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this album, it's that classic thing of you have your whole life to write your debut and a week to write your follow up, and I think this album's very much in like the rock vein in many ways, but there are like softer moments on it too. But the standout song for me is "Give Me Some Water." That song's a tune, absolute banger. It's very much like one of the Eagles' more rocking songs. But like with this album, it's one of those I come away from it thinking that was a good 70s rock album. And then 9 times out of 10, I'll default to thinking, yeah, that's the one with "Give Me Some Water" on it. And then like it doesn't really go beyond that too much. It does have the singles "Can't Keep a Good Man Down," "Maybe I'm a Fool," and "Maureen." And I think if I spend more time with this album in particular, I think this is more of a grower one for me personally. This one has a little more of a sit with it for a while kind of thing to get more acquainted with, but some of the other albums have me from the get-go. Being as this is our joint number 7, over to you.
My problem with this album is that listening to it back to back with the first album, it was just not unique at all. It just seemed like more of the same, and the songs on it are not as strong as the songs on the debut, and so much of it just seems way too middle of the road. And this was the first album. Once I got like halfway through this album, this is when it started to become very apparent to me that either him or whoever, his management or whatever, however they're making decisions for his career, they're just reaching for hits across a spectrum. So I just feel like there's such a mix and match 70s sounds kind of thing going on this album. And honestly, all of his albums, it seems very like by the numbers, certain types of songs, and then some of them are just really good songs, and other ones are like, well, we needed one of these on the album, so here's the reggae one because reggae is really big right now, or whatever, whatever it is. So the fact that this album didn't really show much of a progression, and it didn't have any really big standout tracks for me, it kind of made me go, all right, well, I guess let's get to the 80s. This was like because I think his first album is so good. This one just made me go, let's get to the 80s. I'm done with the 70s at this point. So it ended up being at number 7 for me just because it was out of the original run of stuff up to the 90s, it was the one where I was like, this isn't really doing much for me at all, and I was really anxious to move on. So that's my number 7. Also, moving us to number 6.
I've done a little bit of personnel bird watching over here. I've been reading through the personnel. I just thought to myself, being as this is a solo artist, I thought it might be worthwhile reading through the personnel just really briefly. And
that's a good idea.
I have spotted not one but 2 Toto.
Of course.
At any one time, people have spotted Steve Porcaro on synthesizer and backing vocals, and also Greg Fillinganes, who joined Toto for the album what's it called, Falling in Between.
Has anyone ever put together a Toto family tree that literally like connects
to do it.
Every artist that they have touched, i.e. songwriting or just being a session musician, because they were fucking session musicians. And I'm assuming they didn't stop doing that even when Toto was going.
I think
so it's
Steve Lukather is all over the Thriller album by Michael Jackson.
So could you imagine how much reach that group of musicians, and not just obviously because different members came in and out of Toto, all of those guys. There's so many dudes. And
it's the Kevin Bacon of music, 6 Degrees of Toto.
Probably. It probably is.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I'm going to do that for every album from here on.
Okay. Well, what's your number 6 now?
My number 6 is Where's the Party?
Hey, man, we matched up again.
Hey!
Also my number 6.
Okay, well, first things first, I entirely expected this. To be honest, if you'd have asked me Where's the Party would have been to me around 7 years ago, where I was really deep into my Miami Vice obsession era, where I was just playing Vice City nonstop, and here's how invested I was in 80s Miami in 2017. If I wasn't playing Vice City or Vice City Stories, I was watching Miami Vice. I went all in on this shit. And almost every song on this album could, even instrumentally, it sounds
Keep talking. I'm just opening my door.
It sounds like it's got Jan Hammer's fingerprints all over at least the keyboard parts of these albums, where it's like, Club Michelle, The Big Crash are the 2, big singles from this. But like all the way through, there is this, I am certain a Yamaha DX7 keyboard is used on this, because I know that's the one Jan Hammer used to do a lot of the Miami Vice soundtrack. And that is where I go full nerd mode, where I'm like, oh hell yeah, we gotta find out who's on this.
I expected to like this album more than I did. For that very reason, for the 83 vibes. But my problem was, it was just at that point, and following Playing for Keeps, it felt like it was just kind of more of the same, and he hadn't fully embraced the 80s as much as I would like him to yet. So it almost felt like he was still recycling some old sounds, and so he was still making an album for the 70s, I feel like, only with a little bit more of an 80s production value in some of it.
Perhaps, yeah. Oh,
but
did you? Sorry, you said Playing for Keeps. No Control was the one before this.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same album.
Playing for keeps, no control, and then where's the party? Yeah. So at this point, like the '80s vibes are nice. So don't get me wrong, I like the '80s vibes, but as much as I enjoyed the songs on this album, it was another one that quickly kind of faded into the background for me. So I wasn't as engaged, but
Yeah.
But really, once we get into the '80s, I feel like Eddie starts to get into his sweet spot. I think his sweet spot of the kind of music that really makes him shine. And so, but we're just not quite there yet with Where's the Party? So
yeah. So all in all, I liked it. And this is, this is kind of the crossing point where I go from like passively into to where, this is starting to appeal to little old me over here. Mm-hmm. And I got to respect an album for clocking in at between 35 and at 40 minutes.
Yep.
Being able to get in. This only a 9-track album. But, there's something to be said for short and sweet.
Yeah.
So
who do we got on this album? Anybody noteworthy?
Let's have a quick look. Who do we have? Any Money, obviously. No one from Toto so far.
Damn.
It's okay. I'm sure there's more.
I think they were busy working on Thriller, because Thriller also came out in '83. So
I'm just gonna have a quick look at Playing for Keeps as well, because I didn't have a look at that. Holy fuck!
Well, we haven't talked about Playing for Keeps yet, have we?
Yeah. I've talked about Playing for Keeps.
Oh, you did. Okay. All
right. Carmine Appice plays drums on tracks 3 and 4. I did not know that. Nice. It's kind of fun reading through these personnel things on like a solo artist. Yeah. Okay. Me like.
All right. Well, let's move on to your number 5.
Oh yeah, shit. Because we matched up again, didn't we?
We both matched up on Where's the Party, and it wasn't enough of a party for me. So I was also like, where is the party, Eddie? Come on.
Okay, so we've hit my top 5, and this top 5 is what I'm reaching for first. Mm-hmm. If I'm not going for like a hits thing, because Eddie Money's got that many hits as well, where it's like. There's so many bangers. I'm like, I'd be happy with a hits thing, put that on as well. But he's got a lot of albums that I like. Anyway, my number 5 is 1988's Nothing to Lose.
Okay.
And this album, I can't fault it. It's great 80s pop rock goodness. It's just got synths and like the kind of guitar work to where it's like just Def Leppard-y enough to be in the same bill, but not quite stylistically the same. It's not heavy enough to be considered quote unquote hair metal, but it's one of those things where it's like I've always referred to albums like this as hair metal adjacent, to where I could put this on and then put a Poison album on and be in the same zone, if you get me. That kind of thing where there are songs on this that Danger could have done and I wouldn't bat an eye, Mm-hmm. I love Danger. So, but yeah, I mean, opening the album with Walk on Water, dude, classic. Yeah. The Love in Your Eyes is an underrated song. I love that one. It's just a really good 80s pop rock album. It's one I've spent a little less time with than the ones above it, but I've listened to this album several times and thought, oh, this is really good. This is right up my alley, And it's the kind of album that I love, that my 70s analog tape warmth mates tend to not respond very well to. But I like it. So, did something for me, and that's what matters. Like what you fucking like. Go for it.
So for my number 5, speaking an album that did more for me than it did for you, my number 5 is Playing for Keeps from 1980. So we're still not at the point where like this is an album I want to go back and listen to. My top four would be those. And I appreciated that moving in. He's not really moving into the 80s because it's 1980, but you know it. He's still sort of expanding his potential reach of his music with different styles, but also still recycling kind of these same old things that he's doing. And not all, some of the songs are good, some of them are just kind of okay. I like the way the album sounds, and overall it has a good energy. But just like I said with the when we were talking about Where's the Party, if it doesn't have like just incredible songs, I'm just like, oh, this is undeniably a fucking great song. Then I'm just kind of wanting it to get more fun. And when you're talking about 80s, I'm just like, yeah, let's get to the party. And then when on Where's the Party, there was no party really, and so it's like I'm just like, yeah, let's get there. So Playing for Keeps for me was another one that I just kind of let's keep moving. Like I still love hearing you sing, Eddie, but it's
thank you,
Mr. Money. But yeah, this one once again was enjoyable in certain ways, but also kind of forgettable in other ways. And so it's at my number 5. But my top 4 all have things about them where I'm just like, yeah, I could see myself going and listening to these albums again. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do your number 4.
Okay, so I believe we've matched up with 3 of our 4 top 4. We've got 3 of the same top 4, I guess. Is that how you would say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have 3 of the same top 4. Yep.
So with that, I have in amongst that one hot take. Ooh. I will not be getting to that hot take yet because my number 4 is Can't Hold Back.
Okay, that is not my number 4.
Mm-hmm. So that was a good anyway, that felt good. That one felt good. Yeah. So this one here, it's one of the most iconic Eddie Money albums. It's, many people would think either, if they liked him in the 70s, they'd think Two Tickets to Paradise. If they got into him through the 80s, Take Me Home Tonight, that, featuring Ronnie Spector. There's a fun story behind that. Do you know that?
I know it's a reference to their song, to the Ronettes song.
Yeah.
And he just got her to come in and sing it. But other than that, I don't know.
But do you know how he got her to sing on it?
No.
So she, as far as I know, had retired from the spotlight for quite a while by this point. And Eddie Money apparently got into contact with her, managed to get her phone number and rang her. And apparently she was doing the dishes or something while her kids were running around. And he said it was this surreal moment where he was on the phone to one of his icons. He was calling her and ends up singing on one of his signature songs. It's crazy.
Well, it's got to be his most successful song.
Let me have a look.
Because the reach that this song has had, not only being big in the 80s, but then the sort of 80s resurgence where everyone's loving listening to the 80s music. This is a fucking staple.
Oh yeah, but by and large, this is more than double of Two Tickets to Paradise on Spotify.
You want to know an interesting weird fact about this song?
What's that?
For some reason, it is included on one of the Monster Ballad compilations.
Nice.
And it is not a ballad. No. It's the only one that's on there that I'm like, why is this on Monster Ballads? But it is. I don't remember if it's the expanded Monster Ballads or one of the, because they did like a couple of Monster Ballads releases. And I remember hearing it on there and being like, why? I mean, I love this song, but why is it on Monster Ballads?
I've just noticed something as well. So you know how on like wiki pages and stuff, it'll have like professional ratings, review scores
Yeah.
for an album,
Uh-huh.
and one of the two for this album is Kerrang magazine, and it says 4.5 out of 5.
Wow.
So for what was at the time, the heavy metal mag from the UK, I mean it still is, but
Interesting.
it's you know, holy moly.
That's so
That's when
funny. That's so funny.
yeah,
This same year of like Master of Puppets and Peace Cells, they're like, you know what? Can't Hold Back. Pretty fucking good too.
yeah, yeah. I want to go back. Fucking rips, man.
Yeah.
No one can shred the saxophone like money. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, it's
does he play the saxophone on these songs?
I know he
Look that
does.
up because I know there's that video where he's playing, but that's just a video. Doesn't mean he actually plays the saxophone.
Eddie, it says here, personnel, Eddie Money, lead vocals, keyboards on track 7, and synthesizer arrangements on track 2. So he doesn't play on this song. Let's have a quick look. We need to check for
Who's the saxophonist
saxophonist. Let's have a
or the
look.
saxophoner?
Paul Hansen and Danny Hall. So Paul Hansen is the guy playing saxophone on "Take Me Home Tonight."
Isn't it? It's so weird how like I think I've talked about this before on some other episodes, but in the mid to late '80s, saxophone and horn sections started to get so annoying to me. And I was a kid. I was a little kid, and I just remember being like, "Ugh, what is the deal with all the fucking horns?" But now, like, you throw a saxophone solo in a fucking song, that literally is going to take the song from like, if it's a good song, I'm like, oh, I'll give this a 5 or a 6. Saxophone solo, 9.
Yeah,
It fucking. I don't even care what kind of song it is. It's just a saxophone solo for some reason has come around to be this thing where I just go, oh, this just feels nice. Please, thank you for putting a saxophone solo on this. Anyway,
I really think it's a lost art. The idea of having like a solo in a pop song.
yeah,
Like there's been a few over the years, and I think you get one every now and again. I just think there's just something amazing about 80s music and having like a soaring melody line of either like a lead guitar or a saxophone taking the lead part in a bridge or something like that. I just think it just adds so much more to a song that it's a wonder why it ever went out of style. Apart from granted the notable exception of the early 90s when stripping things back was a necessary step.
yeah.
In moving forward, because things had gotten so overblown that even I need to admit that things started to become unattainable because there were too many people doing the overblown thing.
But even now in the world of metal, I would say guitar solos have gotten so fucking lame and annoying and uninteresting because every fucking guitar player in his bedroom is all and I'm just like, that's why I'm just like,
write a fucking melody for Christ's sake.
I just want people to like, well, because sometimes those solos are really fucking cool, but I'm just like, I feel like so few times guitar players these days, they don't write solos that serve the song. They write solos that serve their ego. Or and sometimes it's cool, but a lot of times I'm just like, this is unnecessary. Same thing like we've talked about with like drummers doing too much in a fucking song. And I'm like, sometimes it's cool. Other times, come on, man. Back it up, Terry,
Back it up, Terry! Oh, no! Terry's just there doing
what you doing?
What you doing, Terry? Yeah. One thing that always stuck with me was coming back around to Toto is Jeff Jeff Picara, the drummer. I remember I used to watch, his like instructional videos on YouTube,
Yeah.
that were obviously filmed in the 80s because, homie died in 92. But like, I used to love watching those like instructional things where it was like, I'm going to be honest, I've never written a drum solo in my life. I am interested in writing songs.
Mhm.
And like, he would write these incredible, intricate parts that are harder to play than any metal beat I've ever seen in my life. Metal drumming is largely physically demanding, but doesn't require an awful lot of thought unless you're doing something really progressive.
Yeah.
Whereas the stuff that, Toto would play, like the beat in Rosanna, like
Oh
you can
yeah.
play like that. That's an incredibly like hard thing to nail down properly because there's so
Yeah.
much subtlety involved. It's hard as a drummer. It's harder to play a beat quietly than it is to just rip,
Oh
So to
yeah.
play like something like,
Well, yeah,
that
yeah.
blows me
Shuffle,
away more.
shuffle type beats, or like the something that like I've always really enjoyed. Like a really good example is like, to the outside listener, like a song like "In the Air Tonight," Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that, but if you when the drums kick in and you start listening, there's like all kinds of ghost notes that he's playing in
Yeah.
that beat, and they're really quiet in between the big heavy things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm always and in fuck. We could talk about Phil Collins all fucking day for many reasons, but like that's a good example. Like sometimes you don't even really know that that's what's happening, but once you know it, you're like, oh, it adds something to the song that I didn't even know was there, and it makes it even more of an interesting sort of drum beat. So I love stuff. I love as much as I love loud, aggressive, annoying music. Sometimes hearing those intricate little drum beats that you have to kind of listen, it's quieter. I'm all like, oh man, that just sounds so nice. It sounds so good. Especially when it serves the song and adds that groove, like the shuffle type beat or whatever, where it's like, if you do it the right way, oh man, it feels so good in there.
Yeah. Like Mushanga by Toto off of the Seventh One album, that drum beat is such a career mic drop where it's like, good Lord, this guy's playing all of this stuff, but it sounds like appropriate. And he's doing all of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I tried to play that, I'd sound like Tommy Lee after a few Jack Daniels just fucking ripping, right? Right. Whereas, like, Jeff Porcaro made it relaxing. It's strange.
Yeah.
It's,
I'm going to derail us for a second. Since because this has been on my mind. You brought up Tommy Lee. Have you ever seen a band come back to destroy their legacy more than Motley Crue is doing? I mean, has it ever happened this way?
I've been passively witnessing. I've been kind of focused on kind of my own shit lately, so I've not been paying attention to a lot of the rock press lately.
It's not. It's not just the the shows where people are claiming that some of it is pre-recorded, and then Vince Neil, obviously his voice isn't that great anymore. I'm not jumping on just that, but like then all the shit with fucking McMars. And now they've released new music. And
this passed me by?
The first thing they did was a fucking cover of "Fight for Your Right to Party" by the Beastie Boys, which is lame as fuck. But here, their new single is called "Cancelled," and so they are now doing old dude shit. And it's not offensively bad. It's just bad enough to where I go, man, you guys, if you had asked me after the first time I watched The Dirt, the movie, I watched that movie and I fucking loved it. And if you had
Yeah.
asked me then, you'd say, okay, what's the legacy of Motley Crue? I'm all like, it's only going to get stronger. People are going to grow. It's, people love Motley Crue now, but give it years that they're going to, literally, they're going to be a band that lives on forever. They've come back and completely fucked it up. And now I'm just like, I'm so mad at them because I am a Motley Crue fan. But I'm so mad that they couldn't just leave it alone. And so now, like, every move they make is lamer than the last move that they made. So it so much bothers me as a fan because I'm just like, your legacy was so, aside from a couple albums but those albums would end up being albums that more people would get into because that's what happens when you build a really strong legacy for yourself and then you fuck off. And it's just, I mean, I can't fault them for wanting to continue to do shit. I understand it. But as a fan, it just bothers me so much that every move they make, I just go, oh, fuck, guys. Come on. Give me a fucking break. And so, yeah. And just so you didn't know about it, but if you go listen to it, it's exactly what you think it's going to be. It's not good. It's just yeah. It just really bothers me so much, and if I'm being honest.
I remember getting into Motley Crue around the time they were wrapping things up, and I remember seeing footage of a teary-eyed Vince Neil on what was planned to be their final concert.
Yeah.
And they signed quote unquote legal documents saying that they legally were not allowed to get back together. And then around the time of The Dirt coming out, which I too love, that is a favorite movie of this century of mine.
Yeah, as filmmaking goes, you could be like, oh, it's not amazing. It doesn't matter. For what it is, I feel like it was perfectly done. It was perfectly done for what it is. For trying to make a 90-minute movie about that band and that based on that book, they fucking nailed it. So,
dude, I have to ask you, do you also desperately want a Metallica Dirt?
Yeah, I mean, I want a Metallica everything. So like you're asking the wrong person, because if you came to me and said like, oh, they're gonna make a Metallica movie or they're gonna make a Metallica video game, I would be like, yes, bring me all the things, because that's just how that's how I feel about them. I guess they have done both of those things. They've done a movie and a video game. But yeah, I would love them to do I almost feel like that, knowing them, I feel like that if they ever decide to hang it up, like I almost feel like Metallica is going to be a thing that goes until Lars or James dies, in some form or another. But if they live to be like super old and they really do like just go, look, we're fucking old, we're hanging it up, I think that might be the point where we're going to get some kind of really cool either documentary or book that kind of is the warts and all kind of, thing. The Dirt was unique though at the time, because that was the first autobiography where I ever saw that they let the contradictions just lie there. So you would have one chapter where it's like Tommy talking about something, and then the next one is Mick going, that didn't fucking happen. Or what, you know what I'm saying? And I was just like, that's why that book is so fucking great to me, because they just let it all like, whatever. It's like if another person is accusing the other person of lying, that's in the book, Yeah. And so I loved that. Anyway, I'm sorry to derail us, but that's really been on my mind. And it came to a boiling point this last Friday when they released that new song, and I just went, oh my God, just no. But if you're out there and if you're watching this and you like that song, then that's great. I love that you're able to enjoy it, and I don't want to ruin that for you. But I'm just coming at it as a fan that I'm so mad that they fucked it up. I'm so mad.
But yeah, so Eddie Money
can't hold back. That's where we were, and I wasn't holding back, folks. I was not holding back.
Cool. Yeah. So again, It's a great album. It's a great mid-80s pop rock. Exactly what you would expect from this type of guy in this era, but done extremely well. Like, god damn, dude, the songs on here are great. Man, Endless Nights, We Should Be Sleeping. There's so many good ones. Yeah, I love it. It's great. Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's keep rolling. My number 4 is No Control from 1982.
Nice.
And this is one where it's got the songs, and so that, you know, it's not as 80s as I wanted it to be, but it has some really great songs. Shaken and Think I'm in Love, like those songs are really good.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I can love it. Yeah.
It's interesting though, because like it really does seem like sometimes like his albums feel like he's holding up a mirror to like modern popular rock music, you know, and just like, well, here's me singing these style of songs. So much so that like it got to the point where I found myself like listening to a song and trying to figure out who it reminded me of. And I was always like Bob Seger, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, Elvis Costello. Like there were just all these other artists that I went, that sounds like one of their songs, but it was with him singing on it, which you could say that's kind of lame, but I really feel like it was just him kind of just like, look, just bring me the fucking tunes. Hey, what, oh, this one sounds like Bob Seger. I like Bob Seger. Let me sing this. And so this is an album that really does feel like it's a bunch of great songs. It's really fun to listen to, but it really does feel like, you know, he's just sort of like, you know, trying to tackle all of the areas of rock and roll in 1982 that he could. And it's a fun album. So that's my number 4, No Control. Not to be confused with No Control by Bad Religion, which is also a really great album. So one day we'll do Bad Religion. For sure. I'm pretty sure they're on the list. So
for sure. We're going to do Everyone Ever.
Yeah.
Providing acts of God don't once again prevent us from another, recording nightmare for the last 2 weeks like we've had.
We're going to have to figure out what to do once we get to Kid Rock. We're going to have to figure out some more animal movies to rank.
Yeah.
Whatever other talking animal movies we can possibly do is going to be that.
That's another thing where I'm like, I'll be the first to admit I shamelessly enjoyed the likes of Bawa to Ba and fucking what's it called, American Badass. I took it for what it was.
Oh, I was offended by American Badass. You fucking take Metallica and make a shit song out of it.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? American Badass came to me when I was 12. And I was like, this guy must have talked to Metallica to let him use Metallica's riff, and he's fucking doing some badass rapping over it. Badass rapping by 12-year-old standards.
Yeah.
That part where he's like, I went platinum 7 times. It used to get me fucking amped when I was 12. And I still feel a little bit of that now, but it's a shame that he went down the route he's taken, because before it was just like, this guy's a harmless redneck doing goofy new metal with a Americana twang to it. But
I just thought he was annoying from day one. Like he's never done. It's always just been like, who gave this dude a fucking record contract? I guess whoever did is smart because they made money. But
yeah, I would say I was never offended by him, but that there is a point at which now we crossed over into the a little too into Trump territory, and it's some things become very hard to defend.
That's an understatement right there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move back on to somebody that didn't. he didn't disappoint people.
Yeah.
Eddie Money,
Okay.
with your number 3 Eddie Money album.
And this is my hottest take of the entire list. My number 3 is right here. And
Okay.
I I thought, I get why you say the accountant thing. Like,
Yeah.
right, I'm not, I'm not adverse to admitting that a 40-year-old guy doing like borderline what is sonically and vibe-wise a 1991 quote-unquote hair metal album, it's not dressed up in the same, androgyny as a Poison album, but it's produced nigh on identically to the stuff that was going on in the 80s hair band scene at this point. Comes in at a crisp 38-23.
That's kind of weird for the early 90s.
Yeah. Well, the thing is as well, like the opening track is a cover of a song by Romeo's daughter, having in the back seat, and that's like a full blown AOR band. And
Yeah.
I mean, she takes my breath away. Fall in Love Again is the monster ballad that should have been, in my opinion. I fucking love that song. That had all of the hallmarks to be a massive power ballad of its era, and I think it could have been had it come out a year prior. The unfortunate thing is it came out the same month as Nevermind, which doomed it really.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way the album sounded kind of doomed it, because like that's the thing is that once grunge really blew up, that was the final nail in the coffin. But prior to that, nobody was listening to shit like a lot of people weren't listening to shit like this already.
Yeah.
And
I suppose with my rose tinted glasses of that era, I like to think that everything just kind of coexisted. But some
of it did, but
yeah.
But I mean, you have to remember, like once Faith No More had a hit and bands like that, things started to get a little bit funky. To use it for lack of a better term, and so the more straightforward rock people, they wouldn't have stood a chance.
Yeah, I think people tend to paint it as well as a more overnight transition than it was. I think that there definitely is. There's this mythical idea at this point that Nevermind came out and overnight hair metal was dead.
I mean, commercially speaking, yeah. But I mean, I remember when Flesh and Blood by Poison came out. That was 1990, and people were already like, "Fuck this music" in 1990. So,
but that being said, just to counter that as well, I mean, Adrenalize by Def Leppard was still a massive hit, and that came out like a full year afterwards.
Yeah, but even then, some people were saying that they were a fucking joke for making that kind of album. In 92. So it's, there, yeah. So you're right. There was like it wasn't a smooth, overnight kind of switch that happened.
Yeah.
And for somebody like me, it was even less so because I was listening to all kinds of different stuff. So the only reason I knew that grunge had become a really big thing was because all of a sudden you just saw a whole bunch of those bands. And I was just like, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
I was going to say, did you ever find, as someone who lived through the 90s, did you ever find yourself listening to something or getting into something uncharacteristic of the era you were in? Like, say, for example, like 1996, you were listening to something like fucking Cinderella or something like that.
No, because up until all the way through the 90s, I was always on contemporary things. So I hadn't gone back. Like the only bands that I went backwards and like was listening to would be like Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, things like that. But for the majority of the music, starting when I got really into stuff like in the mid to late 80s, it was always me looking for the new stuff. And so but that being said, things that would be uncharacteristic for me to get into, that happened all the time. I would discover new things all the time, or things would come out that I wouldn't have expected to be really into. Like when the fucking Spice Girls came out, I was so I still love the Spice Girls, but like that's not something that you would have said, oh, this girl group from England's going to come out and you're going to think they're great. I'm like, yeah, right. You know, so it happened all the time, you know.
I will say one thing about the 2020s. It has restored a little bit of my taste in pop music a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I like what's going on in the 2020s more than what happened in the 2010s.
What who is it? Who's on your radar right now?
It's mostly it tends to be more female artists like Megan Thee Stallion, Doja Cat.
That's on the hip hop side of things, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, where I was heading with that is the line between pop and hip hop is starting to really, merge to where hip hop is so popular now it might as well be pop. But something as well, I've found myself enjoying is just I'm not gonna lie, I got a soft spot for Sabrina Carpenter.
I don't know any songs by her. She kind of came out of nowhere, and I just see her name, and I go, well, I don't know one of her songs.
Espresso, please.
I'd have to hear it, but like, I mean, I'm on TikTok enough that I probably have heard some songs, but I do really enjoy some of the artists like the Chapel Roans that are
Chapel Roan.
They seem to be embracing an 80s sensibility in their sonically speaking, and so
what. I'm going to go to bat for Chapel Roan as well. Sorry to cut you off there. I love her in the sense that she's actually, I think we could have like a Mike Patton style person in her.
Interesting.
To where she'll just like, did you see that thing of like, she'll just say, what she's thinking. She does not have PR trade. She doesn't have PR training at all. She's her own thing. She'll very bravely come out and say, "Hey, look, fuck Trump, but some of this stuff on this side is kind of fucky too." And she's gone down the route of don't fucking harass me. It's weird that you want all these fucking inside stories about me. She's putting boundaries up as well. And she's like criticizing stuff that's normal that like shouldn't be. And I just like that she likes fucking with people. Like, it's that thing. What is it that she was at, I think it was the VMAs or something, and the paparazzi were like going back and forth amongst one another. Yeah. And like one of them told the other paparazzi to shut the fuck up, and she just turned around and told them all, "You shut the fuck up. All of you, shut the fuck up." I just love that. It just, unapologetic personality right there.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Like, Billie
Eilish as well. I'm a big fan of.
I think that I'm hoping that we'll get to a point where there are more adventurous pop artists, because that used to be a thing where you would have your middle of the road pop artists, but you would always have one or two that were super popular that you could never quite predict what they were going to be doing. And sometimes they were setting trends, and sometimes they were highlighting trends that you didn't even know were a fucking thing. Like I'm speaking Madonna here, really, but So I don't know. Anyway, that's another. I feel like it's been long enough that we've afforded ourselves some tangents on this episode. So but how did we get onto that? How did we get onto to modern pop music? I think we were talking about the 90s anyway. All right, well, let's get back to where we were. What are we talking about? You're talking about Right Here.
I was talking about Right Here. I like Right Here. And it's not because I just have a raging boner for the early 90s. It is the fact that I just genuinely enjoy what this album put forward. Is it the grittiest rock album in the world? Absolutely fucking not. But do I like the songs and do I like the vibe? Absolutely. I had a great time listening to this. And it's just one of those that just sits perfectly in that zone of just the right amount of 80s-ness with just the right amount of like just before things were going to change a little bit.
Yeah.
So with that, it's time to head over to your number 3.
All right, cool. My number 3 is "Can't Hold Back" from 1986.
Nice.
The album with "Take Me Home Tonight" on it. So this is kind of, it got to the point now where once this album starts, I was like, finally, because I feel like the straight up 80s pop production fits him perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything, like the saxophone solos, the whole vibe of it, I feel like he hit this sweet spot where the kind of things he wanted to do and his voice, everything just feels like it was a culmination of all the right choices for him.
Yeah.
Because once you get to "Can't Hold Back" and "Nothing to Lose," those are all of a sudden, my comparisons to all these other artists are now gone, because Bob Seger, Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, whatever, they didn't do albums like "Can't Hold Back." And so finally he's hitting this area where, sure, you can say, oh, this is very 80s. I'm like, yeah, but an artist like him wasn't really doing this sort of pop rock kind of thing with the 80s sheen. And so that's why, like, these albums, these mid to late 80s albums, I just think he was fucking nailing it. And not to say that every song on it is incredible, because there is still some filler-ish stuff on this album, but it's fun and I enjoyed it. And it's my number 3, "Can't Hold Back." I feel like at this point in our top 2, we only have one that's the same with us, but we'll have to see if that one ends up being a matchup. So let's see. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so my number 2 is Eddie Money.
Okay, well we have not matched up at all. Well,
okay.
Right here, but yeah.
I completely understand why this is your number 1.
Uh-huh.
Because there is just so much gold here. Mm-hmm. It's just a really good 70s softer rock album.
Yeah.
I mean, you got I would go as far as to say like 1, 2, 3, 4 punch of "Two Tickets to Paradise," "You've Really Got a Hold on Me," "Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star," "Save a Little Room in Your Heart for Me," "So Good to Be in Love Again" as well. "Baby Hold On" is a fucking classic, dude. And
yeah.
This album also, I'm just going to say this now, has the rare claim of being owed to not only 1 but 2 Grand Theft Auto games.
Oh shit!
So
nice.
You got "Two Tickets to Paradise" from San Andreas, and "Baby Hold On," which was in Vice City Stories. So you can imagine that when I put 2 and 2 together and realized this is the same guy, I was like, oh shit, I better get into this guy.
Yeah.
If he's good enough to appear in Grand Theft Auto twice,
yeah,
I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it was a good little deep dive because it was absolutely worth my time. It's just a really, really good 70s album. It was always going to be up high on my list. And all in all, I just love the vibe it has. Like that, that kind of, it is that dry but still bombastic 70s style, to where it's like, we've not quite hit the 80s nor the pre-80s thing yet. It's just a really good kind of, it conjures the very image of the album cover to me. It's dudes smoking cigarettes in a bar somewhere listening to yacht rock, and boy oh boy, me likey. So I mean, with that, over to you for your number 2.
All right, my number 2 is "Nothing to Lose" from 1988.
Nice.
I feel like this is the culmination. This is the peak of his 80s sound and all the vibes being there and being perfect. The 80s pop vibes, the 80s rock vibes, The songs are good. I do like that this is hair metal adjacent at times,
Yeah.
because for what he's doing, I feel like it works really well. It's just like such a sweet spot for the stuff that he did for me. And I just really enjoyed this album. And honestly, like, I hadn't heard this album in many years, and I expected this to just be lower because I'm all like, well, it's getting to later on in the 80s. Maybe this is going to be more watered down and maybe just kind of like a whatever album. But I was so surprised at like how catchy and how
Yeah.
enjoyable so many of the songs are. And already saying what I said about Can't Hold Back, this is just, to me, like, it may not have Take Me Home Tonight on it, but the whole package of this album, I feel like there's my number one, there's a 70s album that I feel like is when Eddie Money nailed the 70s version of Eddie Money, and Nothing to Lose is where I feel like he nailed the 80s version of Eddie Money. And so that's why Nothing to Lose is my number two.
Nice.
Who does number two work for? Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So, speaking of number two, my number one is from 1982, and it is No Control.
That's a good number one, though. I can't fault you for that.
Upon listening to all of the albums here, I came to the conclusion that this album, to me, it's like slap bang between his two quote unquote eras. It's like, It's almost like a transitional album, but I mean, dude, when you've got songs like Shakin', Think I'm in Love, No Control, Take a Little Bit, man, like, take a little bit of my love and hold it. Like, just, there's so many good ones. Passing by the Graveyard. Like, there's so many good fucking songs here. And I just think there's something about this album that just draws me in, to where there's just this whole vibe to it. Apparently, holy shit, I never realized this. This took ages to record and finish. It says recorded February 1979 to summer 1981. Oh, wow. So yeah, I mean, that's before the release of
so some of it was recorded and then he put out a totally different album.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Unless, of course, Wiki is lying to me, which, of course, that's not unheard of either. But to be fair,
it could also be songs that were recorded for that album that they just held onto and put on this one. So that makes sense.
But I mean, man, like, opening with a song like "Shakin'" is just such a that's just such a dick swinging move, where you're like, I've got this song and it's gonna get people fucking moving. I love that song, and what a great way to open this album up. Open up this fucking disc. It's great. I love this album all the way through, and I think a testament to its quality is the fact that I hadn't spent nearly as much time with this album as I had some of these other albums. Mm-hmm. But then, upon re-listening to the catalog for this episode, I came to the conclusion that, look, across the board, to me personally, this is the most consistently well laid out, written, and just badass Eddie Money album, to where, like, even down to, it's kind of like, I mean, there's several of his albums where he's kind of in either sepia or black and white, but it's almost like this album, like, what is it? The debut is black and white with, a pink Eddie Money logo in the top left. Mm-hmm. And normally I'd be like kind of apprehensive of a artist or something just so quickly doing like a about turn back to like a stylistic choice or something, because it's like, oh, they're trying to go back to something that maybe worked before. But no, clearly it was a good omen, because pink and black and white tend to signal, okay, this is a new start, we're going to start again. We had a couple rocky ones here or there. Debut was a smash hit. The follow-up to kind of rocky. as in like, this and that. This album right here is just Eddie Money doing a pretty straight ahead AOR rock album and just fucking nailing it. Like, I listened to this all the way through and I thought, man, I really like every song here at least, and I love several of them, and it's, yeah, which surprised me because I was expecting to give one of his later '80s albums, Knowing Me, a higher slot than this, but man, when I listened to it, I thought this just takes everything great about where he was and where he would go and does it,
Yeah.
So yeah.
We got to look at the session musicians on this one too.
Yeah, let's have a quick look. Okay.
See if anybody, because this is still around that time that we could probably see some folks we know popping in.
Okay, so there's no Toto members as far as I'm aware, but we do have Jimmy Lyon, Marty Walsh, Chuck Kirkpatrick, Ralph Carter, Gary Malabar, Gary Ferguson, Art Wood, Tony Brock, Joe Caldo, Alan Pasqua.
Okay.
I recognize that name from something. Randy Nichols, Robert Blass, Ed Callie. God,
okay.
Session musicians always have such cool fucking names, man. I don't know if it's because I assign them that but do you ever just like look at someone's name and it's like, yeah, it makes sense you're a drummer. Tony Brock, Art Wood,
yeah.
Gary Malabar.
If they are their real names, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah. I mean, imagine being called Eddie Money.
But that's not his. I don't think that's his real name, is it? Eddie Money's not his real name.
So it's born Edward Joseph Mahoney. So Edward Joseph Mahoney.
Yeah. Mahoney.
I
like it.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of Eddie Money, my number one is the self-titled debut album, Eddie Money, from 1977.
Fair play.
This one probably is. There's a little bit of a bias because I like the way this album sounds. Because there are albums from the 70s that I feel like people are still like reproducing the style and the sound today. But then there are some that have like a thing where it just sounds like it's from then. It doesn't sound like it could have been done any other time. And I like the kind of the cool rocker vibe he has on this because he's like, it's a rock album, but he's kind of just like he's not an aggro dude about it. He's just the kind of dude that's like, yeah, I'm a rocker, so what? And that's like what this album feels like to me.
Yeah, I'm really
and it's
fucking cool, but I'm not going to be up in your face about it.
Yeah, and it's got some big hits on it. It's also got some other really enjoyable songs and everything. But the song "Baby Hold On," like I really because I've always enjoyed it, but listening to it when I was listening to the album, it was the first time that I was listening to it, and I'm like, this is a really unique song for like. The vibe of it really stands out. Like there's no
the bass line.
Yeah, and everything about it is like so like unique and it feels really good too. Like there's something about it that just like feels nice. It's like it's like a warm bath of a song. It's just and so that really hit me where I was like, man, this is. That might be like my favorite song that he ever did because I'm just listening to it. I'm like, man, it really does just sort of have a calming, cool and interesting sort of vibe going on. So that, along with the rest of the album, just made me go, yeah, I think this should go number one because I feel like it's the first. It's just him being like, he started his career wanting to go up and sing some songs. And, he had some songs that he wrote as well. And like, I just feel like this was it just feels so honest and sort of like the realest Eddie Money album. Cause I feel like there's just, I don't think, because back then they were signing artists that had potential, but they didn't start hounding them to make hits right off the bat. The A&R people knew that, oh, this artist is really good, so let's sign him to, I don't know, 5-album deal, and let's let the first couple albums be like establishing him. And so I feel like this album just feels like a no pressure, like, here's who Eddie Money is. And I like that about it. I like the sort of effortless, cool vibes of this album. And so it ends up being my number one, which is, okay.
Sweet.
So that wraps up our Eddie Money ranking. After several weeks of false starts, we finally made it all the way through with I didn't see any glitch. I don't know if you saw a glitch on your end at all.
Yep. Which further cements my belief that was 100%, weather related.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. And of course, we got to do this for Eddie Money, because as we do when we celebrate, when we finish an artist's discography, we celebrate like this: 3, 2, 1. Yeah! We did it!
Nice.
Yeah, we did it. Just when you thought it was over. No, I'm not playing music. So that was fun. You know what? It's been such a long road to get to this episode. I don't even remember what's happening next.
I believe we're doing a little slashed and mashed action, I believe, next.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Okay, yeah, that's gonna be fun. Okay.
We may even, are we doing a combined cranked and mashed, slashed and ranked?
Honestly, if you really think about it, it's all of our things combined, because we're going to be grooving and removing, we're going to be slashing and mashing, and we can crank and rank at the same time, because it's only 2 albums.
Yeah.
2 albums total.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I'm not going to give anything else away. Just for, whatever.
All I'll say is this, right? Here's your clue.
Yep. That's it.
Audio listeners, you have no context.
No, not at all. But speaking of listeners and viewers, peanut butter platypus, aluminium squirrels, Belvedere ball sitters, and Christmas dogs.
Dogs.
I appreciate all of you. We appreciate all of you. It's not just me.
Big time.
This show would not be interesting at all with just me, because it's I'm tired of looking at myself, honestly. You don't know this, but like whenever we do these, I pull up my list to cover my face, because I'm so tired of looking at myself. I'm just like,
see, I've got you betwixt I have Google Docs open here on the left, and I have with my notes and whatnot, and on the right I have like the Eddie Money wiki article that I just kind of pull from and fact check on the fly. But I'm looking forward to the next. We're back in business, people. The weather has eased off, and hopefully from now on we shouldn't experience any more bullshit.
Yeah. And if we do, we do. We've made it through all sorts of little things, all little technical hiccups here and there. But yeah. So that wraps it up for Eddie Money. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back with a combo, a combination Pizza Hut and Taco Bell episode next time. And it'll be fun. So thanks everybody for watching and for listening. Are you ready to wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Fucking lady, dude. Leave my fucking house in the corner. You've left a poo.
The amount of times that you've rhymed "dude" with "poo" on this show.
It's right there, man.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.